Do you also find it difficult to build up a meaningful relationship with your grandchildren at a distance? As a long distance aunt to a 2-year-old in Australia, I wanted to create a solution for the millions of family members who cannot be physically together all the time. This is why I created Peekabond, an app that helps you to connect with young children at a distance. The app works with the following 3 steps. First, we give playful activities suggestions that are based on your child's development stage. These suggestions are science-based and gamified. Secondly, you can create a private family circle. And finally, we'll let you send videos back and forth so you don't have to be live at the same time, and save them in one spot for your grandchild to watch. We've got over 120 content suggestions. You can build a love bank for your grandchildren. And if you go to the Cool Grandpa website and look for the affiliate links, sign up for a newsletter with a lot of inspiring content, or you can try the app for free.
The relationship that can exist between a grandparent and a grandchild is unique and powerful. It should be embraced and celebrated in a big way. That's why I created Grandparents Week, a full week celebrating and equipping grandparents with insights shared from world-class experts and thought leaders on becoming a more influential and cherished grandparent. Hi, I'm Aaron Larson, founder of grandparentsacademy.com, the first and only online academy dedicated to helping grandparents grow meaningful relationships and rich legacies with their loved ones from any distance. I'd like to personally invite you to Grandparents Week, starting on National Grandparents Day, Sunday, September 11th through Saturday, September 17th. I'm bringing together experts from all over the world to help you make the most of your special role as a grandparent. You'll hear a variety of interesting topics, including cultivating healthy cooking habits with grandchildren, becoming a fully engaged grandfather, nurturing strong and meaningful relationships from a distance, creating a photo legacy, and more. This is a virtual event, meaning you can watch these interviews and trainings online from the comfort of your home. And best of all, general admission is free. Our way of saying thanks to all grandparents out there for all that you do. Claim your ticket and come celebrate Grandparents Week with us by clicking the link in the show notes at the end of this episode. We hope to see you there.
Welcome back in. I'm excited for you to join us. And before we get started, I wanted just to remind you that there's a Grandparents 101 course that's being offered by Richard and Linda Iyer. Now, Richard's been a guest on the podcast before, and what they've put together is a 6-month course that really does deep dives with once-a-month Zoom meetings where grandparents can come together, we can learn from each other, we can inspire each other, and we can help build those deeper, meaningful relationships. So I've got a link for that in the show notes. The other thing, too, is we are coming up on Grandparents Week for Grandparents Academy. Now, Grandparents Academy, like you heard from Aaron earlier, is from September 11th through the 17th. And this is free, but you've got to register for this. So there's going to be myself and a lot of other experts in the grandparenting space presenting interviews and presenting materials that can help you. But again, this is going to be from September 11th through the 17th, and you have to sign up for this. So go to the show notes, find the link for Grandparents Week, and click on that so you can get in and claim your ticket. Now, the other thing I'd like to do too is remind you, if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast hosting site so that you can make sure that you get these updates and these podcasts every week when they come out. I really want to make sure that you don't miss a single episode. And if you can do me a favor, be sure to share your favorite episode with a friend of yours. That's the best way we can go about spreading the news about how important grandfathers are to grandchildren and to the family as a whole. So, with our guest, we are diving into a really fun conversation. Now, our guest this week is James Lott Jr., and I've been on his show before, and he's been on my show. And recently, I was back on his show again, and we were talking about the importance of male role models and the importance of grandfathers really thinking about themselves as role models. And we carry that conversation on to this week's episode. So you're going to enjoy listening to myself and Papa Jammie talk about being a role model and having that mindset. We just had a blast with it. So I know you're going to enjoy it as well. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Hello, and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host, Greg Payne, coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. James, thanks so much for being back on the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I can't believe we're having you back for another time. But it's also great because I was just on your show again. And so we get to continue this discussion about grandfathers being role models for grandsons and granddaughters.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, you did a great job. I really am a grandparent podcast because really we are grandparents. We don't look it. And we had a really good discussion about that. And you brought up some really good points that I took notes during that show. I used to always take notes, but I took notes during that show going, future subjects. So it was a good show. So I'm excited to be back on your show today.
Yeah, and I'm excited. What we'll do too, folks, is we'll put a link to the YouTube discussion from James and my conversation. We'll link it in here so everybody can go in and have a little bit more detail with what we're talking about. So had a great discussion with it, and honestly, folks, we're not sitting around with a couple of PhDs and, books and theses that nobody reads. We're just two guys that are sharing life experience. And so we're just coming at, this topic of grandfathers helping to be role models from that perspective. So, you're
Yes.
going to get some truth here, and you're not going to get a whole lot of like statistics, which, those are nice, but, not for two guys that are sitting around having a cup of coffee and just discussing life, right?
Yeah, I agree. And, and we are people who are in the trenches as grandparents. I say it that way, but it's a lot of fun. But we are actually active grandparents who are just and we're men, active men. We're here, and we're just coming from our perspectives. And I'm not talking about, what so-and-so says or poll this or poll that. Nah. It's from my experiences of life, and I just share them. We just try to tell the truth and shame the devil. That's what we try to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things that I wanted to jump in on that I had some notes from our previous discussion was this idea that I've had, and, I've done a little bit of reading on it. But, one of the things I think is missing sometimes with the youth today, and this isn't one of those like, oh, here's the problem with all these kids, but it's a case of like, hey, I think culturally we miss out on some of the rites and rituals and rites of passages that used to be part of, a tribal tradition, a community tradition. Certainly there's still some religious traditions that have these rites of passages, but, grandfathers used to be a part of that as well. And it's something I think kind of, because there's so much gray area, James, at least what I observe with, as boys come into young men to come into, more advanced young men, let's say like before you're 12 to 18-ish and then over, there doesn't seem to be a lot of these rites of passages that maybe you and I experienced when we were younger. And I didn't know what your thoughts were about some of those things and maybe even some reflections on those.
Right. That's actually a very good place to start. That's a good question. You should be a host of your own show. I think he is. Okay. So for me, because I come from a multicultural background, and multi-religious background. Well, actually, that's not true. Both sides were Catholic, but multicultural background, definitely. And there were certain, and one had a different language. Well, two had different language. So there was a language thing, and I noticed that with some of my nieces and nephews and grandnieces and grandnephews, like in one side of my family, Spanish is spoken. They don't speak Spanish, so that automatically has a barrier with the grandparents. automatically. They don't speak the same language, or they don't really pick it up. And that's because a lot of times for me, a lot of this stuff that was passed down to me was from my grandparents and from my grandfather and grandmothers. Um, Language, food, certain things that were from that culture were brought to my attention from a grandparent. So nowadays, I don't see that very often either with modern grandparents as much. And if there are out there, please tell us. Give us comments, so you still do it out there. But you're right. A lot of it is either grandparents raising the kids, the grandkids, and they're busy in parent mode, which can be really hard. You're too busy doing that kind of stuff, or you just don't pass anything down. You're just like, I'm so busy living life and trying to get things together, and the kids are over here. Where grandparents back in the day took the time to say, okay, at Christmas time, because I'm also part Dutch, on the other side, that we leave up, you leave your shoes out for the presents for St. Nicholas. On December 6th, it's a whole different thing than actual Christmas. My grandmother made gumbo every year, and that was a whole thing for my Creole side of the family. And for my father's birthday is Christmas Eve. There's like these specific things that we did with the grandparents at different times of the year or as we got older that are milestone markers for me. So in general, I agree that there was a lot of things that we used to do that you just don't really, I don't see them. I try to do it with my own grandkids. I try, but I know other people a lot of times just busy, not for whatever reason, just not passing stuff down. Or they're too busy, or they're just, I don't have time to do this. It's like our grandparents had time. I'm not saying they weren't busy back then either, but they seem to have time to say, James, as I'm standing with my grandmother in the kitchen making gumbo, she's teaching me how to do it. Tell me about her brothers and sisters growing up in Louisiana by the Cane River. Talking about what they each had to do when they turned 16, all that stuff that I have to admit, I haven't sat with my grandchildren and cooked with them. They don't know that yet. We've never done it. I'm a long distance grandparent, so this doesn't happen. But they've had some food. I have taken them out to some experiences with food from my culture, which is their culture too. Kind of like, but it's not as prevalent. So I think you're right. I think back of my grandfathers and my grandmothers, and much of what my ancestry stuff came to me was from them, not my parents. It was from my grandparents.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I've just been thinking about because, like you, I had my grandfather, and I was very active in Scouts for a long period of time, and Little League and some things like that. And some of those have little markers along the way where it's, in Cub Scouts, and even going into Boy Scouts, like you weren't supposed to handle a pocket knife unless you went through the safety course. And then once you went through the safety course, then there was this idea of like, okay, now you have a little bit more responsibility. And if we see you messing up and you're using that pocket knife unsafely, we're going to take, your safety card away, or we're going to, there was something like that where like, hey, you didn't want to necessarily regress. And one of the things I think is great, and grandparents have an opportunity for this, is to do things that are similar. If we think back about like your experience with your grandparents and my experience and some of the other experiences, I think there's some family traditions that we can use as markers for that age, demarcation point, let's say, from like being a little boy to being a young man kind of thing. It's like, hey, now that you're 12 or 11 or whatever that age is, it's like, okay, now you can go on the hunt with the men now, and that sort of thing, where it's like, okay, now hey kid, you've taken a step forward. You've progressed a little bit. And, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think that helps alleviate a little bit of the grayness, and it puts a little bit of responsibility in a positive sense on those kids. So whether it's a grandfather passing down, a fountain pen, hey, this was, your great grandfather's, or this was, now that you're this old, you can take responsibility for it. But, kind of what are your thoughts around that?
And we do so on my side of the family, we do it all the time. My mother and I are always giving her great-grandchildren, her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, my children and grandchildren, let me say it together, We're always passing down stuff to them. My mother is she has some issues with having a lot of stuff. We'll say that. And so when we're going through her stuff and finding things, a lot of times she'll pass it down. She'll go, okay, I don't need this in my house anymore. Let me pass it down to the kids, the grandkids. And a lot of times it's jewelry, or it's a piece of clothing that's like really interesting. And so we do that all the time. And because for me, I have rings from both my grandparents, my grandfathers. I have a ring for each of them. And I wear them sometimes. And I'm like, these are my grandfathers. I proudly wear them. And my grandkids are already like, I want that ring when you get older. I said, sure. I said, I'll pass it down to you. I have two. Well, now I got three grandsons. But I had two at the time. I was like, you get one, you get one. So now I got to change that thought. But I know we do it all the time. We're very much like, here is, for my daughters, here's that special pan that your grandma used to cook all the bread in. She used to make bread for, whatever. And they love it. I mean, we're a sentimental family. It turns out we are that kind of family in terms of items and experiences. I have my grandmother's rosary on the wall back here by the door. I've had it there since I moved in. And it was given to me when she died. And so, man, we're very sentimental family. So we're always passing stuff down all the time in our family. Because and the kids like it. When they get it, they feel responsibility for it. They feel like, you see in their faces, ooh. But it's funny, you mentioned something else about scouts. My first set of grandkids, there's three of them. I have a second set I have one and one's coming. But the first set, I don't live in Sacramento, but I've been to their games. When I go to Sacramento, I visit, but all the grandparents go to the kids' games. My grandkids were and have always been very active in sports. So soccer, baseball, volleyball, water polo, all that stuff. And so on the Saturdays and Sundays and certain nights during the week, the grandmothers have their chairs and they pull them chairs out. They got their drinks and they're sitting there. And when I go visit, I'm always like, is there a game this weekend when I'm here? And they're like, yes. And so then I'm with the grandmothers and whatever we're sitting. Like all the grandfathers passed. I'm the only grandfather left of the group, of that side family of the group. So I'm the man with all the ladies. And we all yuck it up and we watch them, we cheer them on. And but the grandkids get to see this. They see that their grandparents are there. And I notice a lot of people's grandparents are there too. So it's kind of like we're all there for the sports stuff. We're cheering them on, asking them how they're doing. They're so happy to see us out there. And so I feel bad for the kids who don't have that experience. I know there are kids who don't have that experience. And these grandkids are now in high school. But they've had all these years of us coming to the games, coming to the track meets and coming to the things. And, I'm the loud grandparent. So I'm always like, yo, girl, I'm screaming out there. And they love it. They go, that's my grandfather. They know it's Papa Jammie. And so I make it known because I don't live there. So I make my presence known when I'm there. But it makes them laugh and it gives them a memory. That there's Papa Jammie's. I knew because I remember it's a side note. My granddaughter graduated junior high school or middle school, they call these days. When it was her turn to walk across the stage, I was like, "You go, girl!" I did that real loud, and everybody in the audience started laughing. And after she's like, my friends were like, "What's your Papa Jammie gonna do?" Because I'm like the famous guy from Hollywood. So like, what's he gonna do when he crosses the stage? And she goes, I took a beat, and she goes, I started to laugh. I'm like, that's my grandfather, and she loved it. I mean, that's kind of, we're creating something that she will never forget. That's kind of fun. I know it's part of my entertainment value. That's what I'm here for. But it's something she'll never forget. And she'll tell her kids the same story. And remember that time Papa Jammie screamed my name out, it's like that kind of stuff. So I really feel like you said, is showing up and kind of having this separate time that's outside the regular nuclear family. Oh my God. I meant like immediate family. I don't use the word nuclear. Immediate family is very important. That extended family is very important, but that grandparentship is very important.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I thought was really important, and it's come up on a few different conversations before, but it just really struck me as we're focusing in on role models, is being able to be there at the sporting events, at the graduation, where you have other youth that may not have a grandparent, either in attendance or even living, is that you're still being a role model for them, because that's a snapshot in their mind about, man, At my high school graduation, Papa Jammie stood up and yelled for his granddaughter. And so now that young man becomes a grandfather way down the line, but he's remembering that, oh, hey, this is something that grandfathers do. And this is something, and the interactions with grandparents. So, I don't know, it just really hit me about like, we're not just the role model for the immediate grandchild, but it's the kids watching us in general with this idea.
I'll tell you something about that. I'll tell you something about that. So when I came to visit, I forgot what time I came to visit for some time, and my granddaughter Scarlett, she's my only granddaughter. I'm gonna have 5 boys, just 1 girl. So of course she's my favorite. Don't tell anybody. Her best friend Peyton, my granddaughter's name is Scarlett, and her best friend is Peyton. They've been friends for years, and she doesn't have grandparents that I know of. I mean, they never show up for anything. So when I came to town one time, Peyton came up to me. She's like, "Oh my God, Papa Jammie, Scarlett's so happy you're here. She talks about you all the time, and she's so glad you're here." So you're right. It does. The other kid or kids notice that she talks about me, that I'm coming to town, that she's excited. That's something to show them too. That when a grandparent comes, it's exciting. That this guy is coming, is going to be there for her, and she loves him. And I told her, "Yeah, Peyton, I really love her very much. It's like, that's my girl." But I thought I never had that before. Until one time she said, I was like, "That's interesting. I don't know what my grandkids are thinking half the time. They don't tell you it." But I just thought that was interesting that her friend told me that, and ran up to me and tell me that. And my daughter was standing there, we were laughing, but she told us, "So you're right. I guess they are seeing the family unit." I'm sure I guess we all did that, right? We're all looking at our friends' families, right? I guess we do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember playing Little League Baseball, and a few of the crusty old grandpas that had the big stogies when you could smoke at the Little League fields would come out and warm up the pitchers. We're 10, 11, 12 years old, and these guys would be behind the plate with a big old stogie and a catcher's mitt in their probably 60s. And down there catching, and then just the way that they interacted with their own grandkids and then their other family is something that I definitely remember and definitely took notice of. And I think that's a great way that we can, as grandparents, help just model the kind of, future behavior that we hope we see, from the generations.
Yeah, I think so. But you're right. People watching. There are people who are watching, I think, and they say, "Oh, like she always comes." People go, "She always come." Her granddad always comes to the games when he comes to town. That I'm sure it's that specific. They might go, "Oh, when he comes to town, I know I won't be able to see her for a day or so because she'll be with her grandfather." That kind of thing. Like and here's the deal. So at one point, there was an issue because with my daughters, because they're getting a little. So polite if they hear this show. Were just a little beside themselves. They were like, you're always spending time with the grandkids and not with us. And as a grandparent, these are kids. You guys are. I mean, yes, you're my baby girls, of course, always and forever, amen. But you're not babies. You're grown-ups. So that when they're kids, because kids, when they want you, they're just so pure in that they want your attention, want your attention, want your attention. So when I come to town, because I don't live there, I'm a distance grandparent, as we're saying these days now, that they just glob onto me. And I'm like, my attention to all the kids. I love it. I mean, I don't care how I love it. It's great. But I'm not trying to ignore the adults in the room who want my attention too. I love you guys too, but they're the kids. I feel like they really do. They need me more immediately. Plus, their comprehension is different. So, but we had to work it out a little bit so that I made sure. So when my daughter does, a lot of times she'll pick me up from the airport first by herself. We get time together separately first before the hordes come and get me, so to speak, before the villages attack me. So we had to figure out how to do that in a way so that the grandkids still get me, my daughter still get time with me, and then we had times where it was one of the kids' birthdays. I always have a separate birthday thing with each kid, and then we have the one with the family, of course. It's one with the family, so I'm in both. So we had to do some logistical work on that, but it's important to make sure you do that. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great example too of being able to show them how to make it work, and it's stuff that you're creating on the fly to adjust, when, hey, I'm sure there's a little bit, I don't know, conflict's not the right word, but figuring out that, hey, your daughter needs to pick you up at the airport. You guys need to go grab a cup of coffee, some dinner, whatever first, and then turn you loose to the piranha that are going to jump all over you.
Yes, totally. That's what it is.
And so that, I mean, they're going to take that. Your adult children are going to take that when they become grandparents and they end up in the same situation. It's like, oh, I remember, Papa Jammie, we always had, at first we had the airport time and the way back to the house, the quiet time to settle in. And then we turned them loose on the kids.
Yes, exactly. And now that they're older, well, I have still young ones. The 3 older ones are older. They all have cell phones. So now it's a little different. I can talk to them if I feel like it. I don't have to wait. I don't have to wait. Before it's like I had to wait to get there to ask them how is school doing. What's that? Now I can text them and they text me back or to a call and we talk. So it's made things a little easier too now because they are a little more self-sufficient and getting older, and our relationships are forming also differently too as we become young adults. You're not there yet, of course. You have a long way to go, but this part is very interesting for me. That now they're becoming their own. My grandchildren are becoming adults, which is very strange for me. And so now I'm finding what their personalities are, and it's not a baby little baby thing anymore. Now it's kind of like, okay, you're living your life, and I'm living my life, and your mother's living her life, and now we can say certain things we couldn't say before, and it's all the language changes a little bit, and it's a little weird too. But or the competition in sports get a little more serious because now we're working towards college or working towards things start to really change as they get older. But at the same time, I have this other one now who's only a year old and one on the way, so I can still go back to that also, where he just wants me to say hi to him on a video. But the older ones, it's been very interesting to like our relationship is also morphing into something that quite possibly will get us through the adult years. We'll start our adult years. So and also realize they're also growing and finding who they are too at the same time. So sometimes they come to me for extra advice other than their parents. And as we know, that's a whole other story when you're a teenager with your parents. I didn't talk to my parents when I was a teenager. I don't want to talk to them. They got my nerves. I talked to my grandparents and my aunts and uncles. I didn't talk to my parents. The last thing I want to talk to my parents.
Yeah,
so I get that.
Yeah, no, well, and it's interesting too because that's also kind of the natural phases of when I looked up for like typical rites of passages, right? And those were laid out as there's a separation, a transition, and then a reincorporation. And those teenagers are in that separation and transition period because they're little animals at that point. And,
oh my goodness!
Once they hit their early to mid 20s, then you're ready to reincorporate them back in. But
that was my daughters. So
yeah.
I'm saying I went to with the kids first. So I know you're absolutely correct on that, Greg. Correct on that. Now the grandkids, we're learning. Now we're entering that stage a little bit where they kind of want me, don't want me, kind of want me, don't. But it's like it's in there. Well, it's fun. I mean, I think it's hilarious. I love it all, and I am the cool grandpa. So they do come to me for more things than they probably do the other grandparents. I will admit that they probably do because I'm much cooler. I'm way cooler and open, and just talk to me. Let's see what's going on. I'll listen. I'll listen to you. And if I think you're screwing up, I'll tell you. If I think you're fine, I'll tell you.
Yeah, and that's an interesting perspective too. And it's one of those when we had talked earlier about how important it is to build those relationships up early with the younger kids so that when they do feel comfortable coming to you and talking to you about boys or school or, hey, I want to run away and join the Coast Guard or, whatever it is, being able to do that. Because if you don't lay that foundation early, then they're not going to be coming back to you for any of that life advice, right? Because you get lumped in kind of with the parents.
You do, and I've always there's a fine line which I've talked about on shows before. It's always a fine line of being in sync with the parents, of course, and what they kind of want, but also carving out your own identity as a grandparent. You will not dictate to me how to be a grandparent. I mean, I'm going to be the grandparent I want to be, of course, but I will do it within reason so that I don't go against what you guys have set up. I'm not going to I'm going to undermine what you're doing. But my personality is my personality, and that's just not going to change. But in terms of rules and stuff, that's different, right? That's different. Like for example, for us, we do have certain rights. We do sweet 16s for the girls. It's always get sweet. I mean, every girl in our family gets a sweet 16 party. That's what we do. But for the boys, when they turn 18, we do something special with them when they turn 18. So that's kind of what in our family what we do. And it usually depends on what they want to do. But that's tradition we always do. We always do that, and that's we carry it down, and it's just well known as what we do. Unfortunately, COVID hit my granddaughter, which turned 16, so we couldn't do anything. It totally sucked. So we'll probably come forward at 18, another year or so, and do something. But 16, we couldn't do it. But we tried a little something. But other than that, it's just we have our little things. But the kids know this. They know when they turn this age, they're allowed to do blank. When they turn this age, they're allowed to do blank. And I always support my. We did it with my kids. So it seems like my kids are actually following what we did with them. In when can you get a driver's license? When can you wear makeup? When can you start going on dates? Like, what does that mean? Is group dates versus date dates? What does that mean? And so far, I mean, my grandkids are good. They're pretty good. This first set, rarely anything bad. And so I give it to them. But these are traditions that I gave the kids, and it's kind of nice to see they actually followed through with the grandkids so far.
Oh yeah, well, and that's one of the things too that we're starting out the conversation about is these little rituals, and they don't have to be so formalized like I don't know who has big formal, I want to say Catholics, but I don't want to pick up, but it doesn't have to be that, but it can be that, hey, you're 12 years old now, you can go sleep over at a friend's house, or yes. Hey, you're 16 now, we expect you to do, this, or, hey, you can work a chainsaw, or, whatever these things are, it's important that the kids know that those milestones are coming up, and that once you hit that milestone, like I was talking about with the pocket knife, is once you've hit that, you don't want to regress. You don't want to fall backwards. So I think that's important to help them with understanding where they fit within the family, but then where they fit kind of within the world. Like, hey, I'm not a little kid anymore. I'm getting trusted with, using power tools in dad's shop or whatever that is.
Yeah, it is. It's I agree with that completely. Cause my family had quinceañeras, which they have on the Spanish side sometimes. And we don't do all that. We're like, that's something they do at 15. But yeah, this doesn't be a big gesture. So my godmother, may she rest in peace, doesn't live here anymore, is not here anymore. But when all the kids turned 21, she would get a bottle of Crown Royal. That was her thing, Crown Royal, and with the bag. I still have mine. And she would sit us down at her home, and give us kind of a talk, and we'd share a Crown Royal together. That was her, and you kept the bottle, and it's yours. That's your rite of passage. And she'd give you some advice, and that was her thing. And she did it all with the kids. And so when I turned 21, I was very excited. I knew that was like, I get to do it next. Now, of course, I drank before I was 21. That's another story. It's the 80s. Another story. But the point was the tradition. That was the point. And actually, she made some good food, too, at the same time. So I had good food, had some Crown Royal. But and now she's gone. She died of breast cancer 2 years ago. I have that bag. I have that memory. I have that whole thing that I'm holding on to so hard. So when my grandkids, I have one grandson, he turned 21, and he was looking forward to I said, I'm going to continue the tradition. And that's something that we did. But this time I did it with my daughter and with him. So the three of us shared a drink together and advice. Okay. And I thought, that is something you can modify traditions too, folks. I mean, you can always modify them. Yeah. And it was something that the three of us will never forget. 3 generations kind of doing this, but it started for something that I had. And so when my granddaughter turns 21, if she chooses it, we'll do the same with her. It's kind of a fun thing. And I thought that's something that I will never forget.
Yeah, that's the exact kind of memory and the imprint that we want to give, that positive experience of, both of it. It's I don't know, with the Crown Royal in the drink, there's that little bit of ritual there, but then you've got the relationship part of it too. And especially when you're adding in the parent. So now you've got the 3 generation, coming together, and it's probably a heavy discussion, but it's a fun discussion at the same time, is probably what I'm sensing that is,
Yes.
Here's some things about life. Here's some stuff that's going to come up. Here's some stuff you've already faced, salute, and
it really wasn't so much about the drink.
right.
It was much more. It was about, the drink was the symbolic thing, because it's 21. That was the drink 21. So now it was symbolic. Crown Royal was something she loved, so associated with her and our family. But it was no other significance that she liked Crown Royal. That was the thing she chose. But it became significant to us because it came from her. And then, but it was the talk. It was the time out from the world. That's what was that was the point. It was kind of like, okay, everything out there. Let's talk honestly about life. And there was some truths that she told me, and there was some truths I told him, and we talked it out, and it's fine. I think it was fine. It was fine. And so for me, adding my daughter, I thought that'd be actually a cool touch, because it's her first child turning 21 too. I thought we all like to drink, so we all drink. She and I both drink. So we thought it'd be kind of fun to add her into it too. And he was actually up for it. He was like, yeah, let's have all 3 of us do it. And with him, because he lost his father, of my grandkids, he's the only one who doesn't have a father. I'm more of a father figure in some way also. So it's like, I even had that meaning too. That was still passing something down from a male perspective that just wasn't, that he wasn't going to get anywhere else. Because his father and his other grandfather both passed away. I'm the only male left, so to speak. And he's an uncle too, but it's us two. So it had a triple meaning also. Like going back to our talk about being men and being male role models for our grandsons.
Yeah, no, and I love that, because you're absolutely right. It's not sometimes the thing that's important, but it's the, I don't know, lack of a better word, it's the ceremony around it, right? It's the, hey, we came together for this thing. And I think it's important too, or something to think about, of when we can do these things as grandfathers and grandparents, not to leave the grandmas out, about, at different stages, at different points in grandchildren's lives, when you could do something similar to that. Maybe it's, with the cooking, is they get some cooking implements of their own at a certain age. And it's like, hey, now you can help out mom, or you can help out dad with doing a little bit of cooking. When they figure out how to cook spaghetti or something,
Yes.
and they could do a spaghetti meal when mom and dad are busy at work or whatever, and they can go, hey, maybe a 9 or a 10-year-old, hey, why don't you cook up spaghetti tonight? And here's the jar of sauce. You can warm it up in the pan. Nothing complicated, but all of a sudden now that person they've got responsibility with the family. They've been given that. They've earned it. And so, it's kind of fun to think about it in that way. And like I said, where my mind has been going with some of this is that I feel like sometimes the kids get lost nowadays, because we don't have as much with the scouts and the church groups and these different things. You certainly have the little leagues and sports where you get promoted up based on age, but that's not really, hey, congratulations, you're 12 years old. You get to now use these things around the house that signify you're 12.
Yeah, it's one of those things where unless you come from an Orthodox family of some sort, or a heavy immigrant family where the home is very immigrant heavy, a lot of times you don't get that kind of treatment of, this is your culture, it's what we do. There's some of it. So I come from a family that I have family of immigrants, yeah, of some sort, but it wasn't that heavy. I didn't live in a house full. I didn't live in a house with my grandparents. I lived in a house with my aunts and uncles. They're just my parents, my siblings, and us. Which is a different, it's a different story, which is different. And I come from several backgrounds. So most of my kind of teachings came from visits, and came from visits to the home and visits to their homes. Very different. So when you went to someone's house, I remember when I went to my grandmother's house, you couldn't drink. You couldn't have anything to drink till after you finished your food. That was a thing. You have your food first and you drink. You want to ruin your lunch or dinner. They fact quickly realized that James Lott Jr. will eat no matter whether he has stuff to drink or not. I love foods. They realized that don't work for James. But that was the whole thing. At my house, we didn't have that rule. But when we went to other grandparents, my one grandparent had lots of plastic on her furniture. So there was certain places we couldn't sit and certain rooms you just walked by as grandkids. They were for the adults. I mean, it was very Southern, Louisianan, Texan, Mississippian way of, you could play outside until dinner's ready. Then you come in, you wash your hands, you sit at the table. Like, it was a whole thing at that house. In my other house, it was strictly, you spoke Spanish, you just speak English in the house. I had all the Spanish dishes every time I went there. There was certain music being played. That's also part of the cultural thing you're learning, the trap passing down. It's like every house something different. So going somewhere was when I got it. But you're right. Unless you're in a house where it's just like you live with some people do now. You live with grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles, and then my Big Fat Greek Wedding always comes to mind. And when that happens, which I love that movie, of course, not everybody grows up that way anymore. It's not anymore. I mean, I just think it's one of those things. Luckily for me, my grandmother was 10 blocks away growing up. I used to walk to her house all the time. She wasn't that far away. My other grandmother was in LA still. She wasn't that far away either. My other grandparents were in New York, or in Puerto Rico, or they were somewhere else, or in Holland, they were somewhere else. And so those trips were fun too. But I think nowadays it's not the exact same. There are some, I see some who have their either church practices or things like that, but it's just not. Well, not I'll say actually also where you live in Los Angeles. I see it's not the same. I have cousins in the Midwest where they're very close, and it's a whole ritual thing that goes on there. So I would say out here in Los Angeles, California, way more relaxed in that area. I would bet.
Yeah, I know. I bet. I can imagine the Midwest crew. There's probably a formal Sunday dinner at some point.
Yes.
Maybe not every Sunday, but at least once a month, everybody comes over. There's a big pot roast. There's a big, all veggies.
Well, that sounds good. Oh, that sounds good right now. Big pot roast made by grandma or grandpa.
Yeah.
One of the two. I'll take it.
Yeah, but those things are important. So, and folks, that's what I think we want to really come across is that doing these things, even though they may be a little bit forgotten, are still important for the grandkids, and still important for grandfathers to have that role and be that role model as kind of a leader in the positive sense of the family, and being able to say, hey, you're this old, here's a pocket knife, or here's your first set of tools, some ratchets and some screwdrivers, so you can help out with home maintenance or whatnot. Look for those opportunities. And then, James, what are your thoughts and ideas around even taking that out with, like, your granddaughter's friend, who didn't have that, about being able to take some of these kids under our wings, appropriately and everything else, and kind of sharing that love and sharing that life experience with those kids as well.
I'm everybody's papa at this point. I think at this point, I am. If you haven't guessed this by now, Greg, I'm a very friendly person. No, and especially here in LA, I'm everybody's daddy, James. I'm very paternal. I don't know. I was an old man when I was a kid. They all tell me, James, you were a little old man when you were a kid. If you could carry a briefcase and go to a job, you would have been 5. That's just how I am. So being a paternal figure, it just comes natural to me. I don't know why. I don't know where it comes from. It does. So, especially I work in Hollywood, as you know. So a lot of the younger talent view me as a father. Some used to view me as a grandfather too, because so young. But they view me in a way where I can talk to Daddy. I can talk to Daddy James or Papa Jammie. I can talk to them because he will tell me the truth. He will give me comfort. I have a stable home. A lot of them are living with 5 roommates. Also, we all did when we were young or during college. So a lot of my grandkids' friends love talking to me because they know I'm hilarious. I have a good time and I'm there. And many of them don't have parents and grandparents or parents. and or grandparents. And so I mean, if you're a good kid and you respect, come on in. I'll be everybody's grandparent, you know, and I'll do stuff. And we used to have these gift exchanges at the end of the year for one part of the family, and I buy gifts for all the kids, whether they're my grandkids or not. They're kids of the family, and everybody got a gift. They got me gifts. Papa Jamie gets gifts, you know, and I grew up with these kids, and now I'm watching them raise their kids, and I'm still Papa Jamie. I mean, biologically, I may not be related to them, but they're biologically related to my kids and grandkids. They're their cousins, and we're all family. I mean, if everybody's nice and treats me with respect, I have no problem taking under my wing. I think it's also, see, I come from a village mentality. I always feel like, you know, the village is very important. That's how we started. The village uplifts everyone, and the older people look after the younger people, and the younger folks look up to the older people. And so everybody does their part. So I create these little villages wherever I'm at. That I can't help it. I feel like that's part of my job. And I check on people and say, how are you doing? And how are you doing? And what's going on with you? Do you need anything? You know, within reason, of course. And I love it. I will always be that way. And I think it's also very important because there are people, like I didn't have a father really, not really. So I did miss out, but there were some male figures in my life that were father-esque that did kind of fill some of those voids. And so and you cannot, I'm not here to replace nobody, of course, whatever, but it's like, but also they help heal a little bit, help heal the hurt, get some attention from somebody that's kind of like something you're missing. I think there's something wrong with that. I think something wrong with that.
Well, and I love it, and I'm hoping that, you know, you being a great example for folks, you know, maybe even like myself, that maybe withdraw a little bit because the way things are now, right? I hate it that if I want to go and help out with Little League, the first thing I've got to do is do a background check. And then it's like,
Yes.
you know, and all these different things where, but I think it's important to hear messages like what you're saying as far as like, hey, you've got to, you almost have to push through that, open up your wings, have appropriate relationships, be that example,
Yes.
be that fun-loving guy, because kids need that. You know, you don't know who is missing that father figure or that male role model. And, you know, you've got an opportunity to do this, you know, if you've got the circumstances and everything to make that happen. Because I can tell you, I had Little League coaches that didn't have families, and, you know, we did some one-on-one drills after practice to help me get better. I'm still thinking about that, and that was 40 years ago.
Yes.
That importance there. So, well, James, any other thoughts about this subject about being male role model and what we can do to help out these kids? And, you know, I'm still processing everything that we were talking about.
I love it.
But
yeah, for me, my message kind of is, well, it's always an ongoing, ever changing conversation and topic always. How far do we go? How far do we not go when it comes to our grandchildren? That's always, and it's in a case by case basis. Obviously, we're not saying everything one size fits all, but the one thing it does fit all is respect, compassion, grace. We all can use some grace these days. That, you know, we just, you know, your love for your grandchildren is number one, and you want to get that across to the parents, which are maybe your children or your in-laws. That you're not here to disseminate that or make it crazy or add drama. You I love my grandkids. I want to be a part of their lives, and there are things I would like to teach them. And that's the basics. I think for me, I try to live a certain way, so you see by example that I'm somebody you want around. You know, that's number one too. How are you living? If you're a grandparent out there doing some unsavory things, and it's your life, you do whatever you want. But if it's just some stuff that's not the greatest, then they have rights to say, I don't want you around. If you're living a life where your grandkids could be in danger, then you shouldn't be around. The world's a dangerous place, period, as it is. But if you're doing things that are leading you in directions that aren't the greatest, let's say that, then that stems from that. But if you're living a life that's just, you know, your normal life, you're just doing your thing, and And I think that you're showing people that you stand up for yourself when necessary, you're kind when necessary, you're compassionate. That's the role models I want in my life, period. That's what I want in my life, period. So I want to make sure my grandkids see, oh, Jammie's doing okay. He's good. He's nice to people. He's friendly to folks. He's there to lift a hand or lend a hand. He's there when it counts. He apologizes when something goes down. I say, I'm sorry I couldn't make it to this. I'm showing them all this stuff so that they can go, okay, he's cool. This is good. This is good. But literally, my life, how I live it, is my number one thing to everybody. How you live your life, which is your business, live it however you want to. But just know how you live your life does have a direct effect on your kids and grandkids. And so so I try to be a good role model for my kids and grandkids, especially my grandsons, especially that I live my life a certain way that gives them at least a goalpost or marker to say, okay, don't be me, be your own selves. But go, well, you know what? Papa Jammie be a little crazy sometimes. He says some crazy stuff on TV, but he's fully himself, and he's a kind person, and he's this. Then I'm good. Then they're good. If they get that message, then hopefully they'll be kind people also, and everything. So that's kind of what those are kind of like as you always say in the business, put a button on it. That's kind of what my button on this subject is, that how you emanate and what you do is what the example you'll be setting for the others.
No, and that's great. I really love how you put a button on it. And folks, I just want to reiterate too is this idea that, hey, we want to be role models for our grandsons and granddaughters, and we want to encourage everybody to open up your hearts, open up those wings a little bit, because there are kids that are friends of your grandchildren that are hurting, that may not have that role model. And, taking those kids out for a slice of pizza with your grandkids will mean the world to them, and helps give an example of what that love and compassion can be coming from a male role model. So Now, James, where can people find you? What's going on? What do you got? And by the way, I've got a new YouTube channel title for you now. Papa Jammie.
I know. I haven't done anything with Papa Jammie, which is so funny. I haven't done anything with it, which is I do everything with my last name. I haven't done nothing with Papa Jammie. I get called that all the time. So who knows? Maybe something will come out of that.
Yeah. We'll put it in the development pile.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't do enough already, right? But yes, right. I don't. But but that's something I don't do anything with that. I do anything with my last name. I don't do anything with that. Sorry, but you can follow me where all James Lott Juniors are at James Lott Jr. on all social media platforms. I also have an online network called JLJ Media, and the YouTube channel has over 50 shows. So go ahead and check those out on video. Now on audio, we are everywhere you want to be, from iHeartRadio to Spotify to Google to Apple, everything. We are there. You can type in JLJ Media or think of a show and type it in and see if we do it. We do everything from soap operas to Star Wars shows to insurance to organizing, everything in between. We do everything on my world. I have great co-hosts and I'm on many of the shows. We have a good time. We have audio dramas. We produce, so I write them and direct them, and we have audio dramas out there, over 15 of them. So you want to have a radio show in your ear. Check those out also. But JLJ Media is where you can find all this stuff from. Also, you have some new little ventures. We have jljmedia.threadless.com. That's our new merch store. We have merch. I talked to you last time, Greg.
Awesome.
You have merchandise. And it's selling, so thank you. More designs coming up every day. It's all JLJ Media related on there. And we also have a thing I call a tip jar. It's called buymeacoffee.com/James Lott Jr. And it's like a tip jar. So you're going to give me coffee, buy me coffee. You can buy me coffee on there, like $5, buy me coffee. And you get a free podcast. So there's a podcast on there called Lots and Lots of Coffee. See my last name. Lots and Lots of Coffee, where I talk about coffee. Every 4 or 5 days, a new episode of coffee, Greg. That's all we talk about.
Oh, that's awesome. Man,
yes,
how do you sleep at night? When do you have time for this?
I do sleep. I tell people I'm too old not to sleep. I sleep like 7 hours a night. I do. I love sleep. I took a nap earlier today. Trust me, I like to sleep. I'm just very organized when I'm awake, Greg. That's why I told you I'm very organized.
Yep.
But to unlock that, it's called Lots of Coffee with James Lott Jr. and friends. We talk about all kinds of coffee. But to unlock that, you just go over to buymeacoffee.com/James Lott Jr. and donate $5, $10. And then it unlocks. You can have some fun. I think we have like 10 episodes already out or something like that. It's a lot of fun. And that's where you can find me, or just Google me at James Lott Jr. You'll see all my stuff.
Yeah, and folks, if you're out driving around or out for a walk, I'm going to put links to all this stuff in the show notes. So go to thecoolgrandpa.us and find this episode, and we've got links to all of James, all of his good stuff there. So make it easy for everybody, including our YouTube conversation that kicked off this conversation.
Yes.
So, you're going to have a great couple of hours listening to this stuff. So, James.
And we're not done. So, Greg may come back on my show again. Might continue some more stuff. So, because we're still thinking about things, right? We're still thinking.
Oh, absolutely. And James, this has been absolutely fabulous. And I've loved having you on my show. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
What a cool conversation with Papa Jammie. I always enjoy being on James's YouTube channel, and then I also enjoy having him on. We just have a great chemistry, I think, and we bounce ideas off of each other and concepts, and it's just a fantastic experience having him on. One of the things that really stood out to me was towards the end of the conversation when James is talking about, hey, grandpas, live your life however you want, but understand there's consequences in how your relationship with grandchildren might be based upon the decisions and the lifestyle that you're choosing to have. So, and I thought that was really important because I think sometimes we just get into cruise mode and we don't think about things and we don't think about decisions or situations that we put ourselves in or maybe even our families in sometimes. And so it's a great reminder for us to be mindful about what we're doing, how we're acting, and the image, for lack of a better word, that we're putting off to our grandchildren and to our families. So that was really inspiring to me. Be sure to go to the show notes, check out the links for Grandparents 101 and also the Grandparents Academy. Make sure you reserve your spots for both of those fantastic programs. Also, please be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend. I know I've said that before, but it's true. People sharing podcasts and talking about podcasts is the best way podcasts tend to grow. So, hey, until next time, remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.